Hello, friends. Today we will be handling episode number 20 of GPETs, that is Geopolitical, Economic, Technological, Social, Environment. Now, this episode during second week of September, we will be taking assessment of global events, but not much time on it now. The events in Sahel region of Africa, which is part of Western Africa, which is part of Africa. Sahel region has 13 countries, formerly all colonies of France, and fourth country has gone through a coup recently, and we will discuss the implications of that. Third is the BRICS summit, some more summary of what has happened there, and the comments which have been made by the UN Secretary General and IMF, let's call them neutral persons, about the multilateralism and the National Development Bank. Fourth point we can pick up is last few days there has been major disturbance in the capital city Skadu of the Gilgit-Baltistan area, which we call Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which touches Chin on one side and the Indian Kashmir on the other side. Lakhs of people have gathered together, and we will discuss what the issues are. And the Chief Minister of that state has requested the federal government of Pakistan to send them army and rangers. Then we will discuss briefly about the ASEAN summit, which is happening next 2 days, and the G20 summit, which is happening from 8th to 10th in Delhi, where practically all the leaders are coming, including the invitees, except Mr. Xi, the president of China, and Mr. Putin, who will be participating virtually, and his foreign minister, that is Russia's foreign minister, Lavrov, will be attending the meeting. I think these four items we will cover, and the additional sanctions which have now come again last few days on the African countries where the coups have taken place, and the and Russia. So we will cover that up. So let's see. In Sahel region, it was the French who had the colonies. At one point of time, it used to be said that they used to have a lighter hand, but there was nothing like that. They have to spread a culture and so on. The control was kind of tight because in all the 13 countries, the currency was the French franc. The Central Bank of France was also handling the central bank operations of these. Then each one of them has substantial resources, and it's French companies which were taking away the resources. So we will start with the recent example of Niger, not to be confused with Nigeria, which has oil and is much bigger. And then again, last few days, the state of Gabon, where a coup took place after recent elections, which were considered to be rigged. Now, starting with the Niger, that's a major source of uranium in the world. It has gold, it has oil too. Gabon has a lot of oil. So the French companies were taking away the yellow cake, uranium, and of course the gold and so the country remains very poor, though it's resource rich. Gabon, same thing, oil. So Total company of France takes away that crude, sells it and so on. The country of Gabon gets very little out of it, but their presidents get a lot out of it, which is now getting proven. They have billions of dollars of properties and luxurious villas and Rolls Royces and whatnot. And so now that is coming up. The unfortunate thing is that this whole area has had more than 25 coups since they became independent. And when coup comes and the earlier party is replaced, then it becomes almost as when Soviet Union was there, it almost becomes like a problem between USA and Russia. You got it done, you got it done, you got it done. But if you go into detailed analysis, and we will put some links which give detailed analysis, that who has done what at that time, So nobody is holier than thou. Both parties have been doing this. Now, in the current context, since French had the colonies, but French don't have too many military men there. In Niger, there is a base of the US Army with more than 1,000 people, lots of equipment. It is also the drone center for whole of the Africa. So that means they have the facilities. Now look at the process. There is criticism by France, and the Janta institutes a government also interim with the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers who tell the French government that kindly take away your military people from here. We don't want them. Then they say to the ambassador, kindly leave this place because we have no diplomatic ties with you. We had a military pact with you. We don't want that military pact to continue. So one way of looking at it is that the new government is saying that we don't want this. We don't want foreign troops on our soil because that will only create problems. And they are giving time for the French embassy people to leave comfortably without any problems. Now, when that doesn't happen, they had given an ultimatum that then the government starts cutting off their power and water, etc., etc. So, having said this, the other part of that geopolitics is that there is an organization of, again, about a dozen countries called ECOWAS. So, that is the Economic Association of the Western Africa, Western African states. Not very powerful, but Nigeria is the dominant party in it. That accounts for 60% of the GDP, perhaps of the population also. But it is dithering in terms of how ECOWAS should do, though there is a resolution that they will come with the military and reinstate the earlier president in Niger, but they have not taken that action. And Nigeria has given sufficient indication that they will probably not participate in this action, military action, because there is repercussions for them also. And French have been saying now, and the US Army is saying, US is saying, that we will support if ECOWAS goes for a military operation. Now, this is where it is a typical thing of how the conflicts get enlarged. It happened in Vietnam, it happened in Korea in the 50s and 60s, it happened in Iran, it happened in Iraq, Libya. Wherever the oil was there, these issues will come up, and US government or NATO will say that they have terrorists, and so we are going after terrorists. And so in the case of Osama bin Laden, they said so. Finally, he was found in a compound in Abbottabad, in Pakistan, with his family. And 2 helicopters go there, one gets crashed of the US army personnel, and they kill unarmed people, ladies there, children there, and so on. Now, to their own Congress, they have been saying all the while that because Osama bin Laden is there in Afghanistan, so therefore we need to attack Afghanistan. What has Afghanistan or Afghanistan government done wrong? Nothing. Their people were not part of the 9/11 thing also. You'll be surprised to know that 9/11, out of 11 people, 8 were Saudi citizens. And Osama bin Laden himself was a Saudi citizen, son of a leading contractor, the leading contractor, construction company of Saudi Arabia. So now, in the name of Osama bin Laden, that he is a terrorist and he is leading a terrorist organization, all that, such actions only lead to creation of the terrorist organization. So, incidentally, in the Sahel region, which is also quite poor, and it's below the Saharan region, so some part is green and some part is also desert, almost for each country. And therefore, there is it's like factories for the Islamic terrorists, and they pray to Osama bin Laden as a prophet. So now you are importing that problem again. In Afghanistan, you did so much against people for about a decade, and before that, Russians for about a decade. So 2 decades of pressure from the outside forces, powerful forces, and they could not subdue Afghanistan. And in the name of that, Osama bin Laden is there, and that terrorist organization is there. And in the end, he is found in Pakistan. Now, similar things are now coming here. If a narrative is built up that the current coups which have happened, these people are bad, right? Now, we will not go into details of who is right and who is wrong, okay? And then they will say Russia has supported it, or China has supported it, or both have supported it. Now, what happens in the UN Security Council day before yesterday? The case went saying sanctions on them. And Russia opposed it, and China was abstained from the vote. So 11 votes in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstained. Since Russia and China have veto, end of the matter, the resolution falls. But imagine, within 24 hours, European community has come up with sanctions on Niger. Okay, why? Because actually it is a colony of, it has remained a colony of France, though technically France went away in 1960. If they control your currency, if they control all your raw materials which they take up, the expensive raw materials, so then it's quasi-colony only. Having said this, so yesterday European Union said sanctions. Not only that, we will put sanctions on Russia for what? Now this is something to be understood in geopolitics. On gold, that nobody will trade with Russia for the gold. Russia is a major producer and a major exporter of gold. Why? Why they say it? Now, how does Russia come into it in Niger? That their gold cannot be transacted. They'll say because we want to weaken the economic power. Then you ask the question that earlier sanctions, what have they done? Have the earlier sanctions meant weakening of Russia as an economic power or as a military power? Objective answer is no. If their oil and gas could not go to Europe, the oil went to Russia, India and China, and at a discounted price. So they were able to sell all the oil which they were producing. What's the problem? And they were able to import things which they wanted from third countries, from Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan or one of those Eurasian countries, or even Hong Kong, Singapore. To which again they'll put sanctions that those countries cannot supply. So supposing it is food item, supposing it's medical item, how do you keep on saying that these Russians will not do it? And in the end, will it matter? Because after all, Russia is not that poor in scientific manpower and so on and so forth. You are a country, you have oil, you have other things and all that. You don't bother to make all small things yourself. You get it from China, or you get it from somebody. And if you think semiconductors you will be able to do it, then we'll have a separate session that how is the semiconductor industry shaping up, or it has shaped, and whether sanctions on China have made any difference, or has it made any difference? If it had made difference, then our Chandrayaan could not have gone up, because some or the other electronic parts will be there which you import from somewhere or the other. And they were threatening again, we will not give anything to India also, which has, quote unquote, any military value. Now imagine, any satellite which is going up, it can have commercial application, it can also have military application. And what is military application? Seeing what are the things down below, whether they are tanks or whether they are animals in an African park, animal conservation park. So the satellites will have those pictures and all that. How can you say that it won't have military application? Then practically for anything you can stop it. If you can stop it, however, your own business is also affected. Currently, you will be surprised that most of gold is traded through Switzerland and England. Now with this, that supply chain will get affected, because they will immediately point it out that England has done this, which they have been doing. On the open seas, they have been taking Russian oil and sending it to Europe and to India also. Proven by BBC documentary, which we will also put as a link. So now we come to that. What is the process which is going to happen? UN Security Council has said no sanctions. However, the vote is obtained. EU says put sanctions. Now to whom can the EU say? Can the EU say to India? Technical answer is no. Can it say to other African countries? Technical answer is no. But they might put pressure. But for how many countries they'll put pressure? They put a lot of pressure in the context of Russia. Now why do you want to do it on the poor countries? And they don't imagine that those countries which had been colonized earlier, like India, have sympathy for these African countries, for the kind of exploitation which has taken place, kind of slave trade which took place there. And now for the last 40-50 years, they have been taking away all the minerals and gold and diamonds and oil and rare metals. And those fellows, yes, some of them are again rich, like any of these countries, like president and cabinet and army generals and all that, like Pakistan, and the rest of the people are poor. There is no medicine, there is no education, nothing of the sort. Whatever money is there in the budget, that goes for army equipment, military equipment. Now, between, let's say, Mali, Burkina Faso, which had a coup, and these are all next door people, Niger, and then now Gabon. Now, what is it that they have to take against each other, that they have to have armies and fight with each other? What for? They have the resources, they should exploit. They should not let the raw materials go, they should do value add. But if they are kind of independent. So, now therefore the issue is coming again, how does it get connected to multilateralism? If Russia and China are not there, who will support these African countries? They will get under the pressure again. So Russia has said that, African countries should not bother. If there is any shortage of grains anywhere, we will send. Okay, so they feel comfortable. They also know that if there is a problem with military equipment and all that, they can approach Russia. Though it is having a fight of its own, but it has sufficient manufacturing capacity that I'm giving as an example. They can come to India also, they can go to some other country, but from Russia they may even get free. So that is the confidence which comes. And this is where India participated. We developed a non-aligned movement, Nehruji time, and where Mr. Tito of the Yugoslavia was member, and Egypt, Mr. Nasser was the president. And Mr. Nasser later got assassinated because the other parties don't like this kind of movement. So they broke it. And so now, in that context, again, geopolitically, Egypt has become member of BRICS. Okay? Saudi Arabia has become member. UAE has become member. So like 6 nations, Iran has become member. And so these people generally also have sanctions against them. Iran has sanctions against them. Russia, of course, has sanctions against it. So this is what they say, that sanctions are being used as a tool of weaponization. That it is weaponizing your dollar. It is weaponizing your this thing. Because once you take over the assets of these people and say it's government assets of Russia or of quote unquote oligarchs, so they grab it. The same thing they will do within few days of people in Niger and Gabon, where they have. So they will grab all their properties. That's all. That is like thieves, actually. I mean, if your central bank of a country has put money in a French central bank, what's the meaning of then grabbing it? One government or the other, this is an internal matter. Let them sort it out. Let them sort it out. So I will just break it to say that where is this likely to go? It is likely to go in this fashion that these 4 parties will actually get together and they'll support each other. Not counting the risk of, they getting submerged. And if these 4 parties get together, then 1,000 persons of US, whom they may not even put directly in confrontation with them, and French military is very small, and they may even end up throwing them out even before any fight starts, ECOWAS will chicken out. Because Nigeria is not there, the rest of them don't have sufficient strength to do anything. And Nigeria has to look at its own situation. It has to sell oil to the rest of the world. If it is fighting local war, who will buy their oil? So, combining it together, the American media, the European media has already started drumming up that Russia is behind it. It's vegan. That group, Wagner Group, was behind it. Though that guy is died now. Its head, and so that's why the price. Now you can say Wagner Group, 1,000 people. Well, what about 1,000 soldiers of America who are sitting there? What work they have there? What is the business of having a huge center of drones there in Niger? Niger was it afraid of the next close by neighbors? No, it was not. So in geopolitics, and therefore what happens? Now supposing the gold thing or sections of gold get affected, and here the gold which is going out of countries like Niger gets affected, then the gold prices will go up. Gold prices will go up. oil prices will go up. Because what Gabon is supplying via Total. Total is a very large French petro company. That will be short. If you're putting pressure on Russia, they may reduce production. The oil price will rise. If oil price rises, food prices rise, transportation prices rise, inflation rises. Now, those countries and the people within those countries who are on an edge of viability or balancing the budgets, they get affected. So, in a sense, the Indian stand is good. Now they have started saying that we are not neutral in the war, we are for peace. It's partly how to manage the G20. So let's briefly come to G20. With one or two comments on BRICS first, that both Mr. Guterres, the UN Secretary General, and IMF Managing Director have said that the time for multilateralism has come. So they are accepting that. They are also saying that yes, reforms are required in multilateral institutions like the IMF itself or the World Bank associated with it, because now they're sensing the competition. They've started praising the National Development Bank, NDB, set up by BRICS. They've started talking about the possibility of a common currency. Though BRICS has said that for the time being we will not have a common currency, but we'll go for mutual currency trade. To which IMF has said that we've done sufficient research and it is a possibility. This is a good way. The reliance on dollar will come down, right? So they are beginning to adjust their narrative now. Because if they have to hold on to their jobs in IMF and UN, they will need support of these global South countries. So, wrapping it up, we will be seeing what happens down the line. But the possibility I see is that out of these 13 Sahel countries, which also have quote-unquote a lot of terrorists, what the West calls terrorists, ISIS and so on, and they could get ignited. And when it becomes a terrible terrorist problem elsewhere, and then the Western country will come and say that we want to destroy these countries because there is terrorism. This is what they did in Iraq, Libya, and whatnot. So that becomes an excuse in coming and destroying these countries and take away their oil, their resources. So, if we see both sides of the story, it is that we should be assessing, and India should take a very careful, neutral position in these things. Thank you.